Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. I was at the Hilton Hotel in downtown Albany, close to the Capitol building. It was around 9 o'clock on a Thursday night, and I was there, not as a guest, but to find my wife. She was with her boyfriend. I knew about it for some time, and it was weighing heavily on my mind, pushing me to act. I had thought a lot about what I would do next. There's only so much a person can take. I tried to ignore it for months, hoping her relationship would end. But it didn't. Diane stayed involved with Darren Ranger while acting like a loyal partner to me. We talked about our future, yet it felt empty. She didn't mean any of it. I wondered what made her seek comfort elsewhere. I must have been falling short in some way. Could I win back her loyalty after she found affection with someone else? I waited for months, but she showed no signs of change. So I decided it was best to end things. It took time to accept that decision. I worked long hours, up to 18 a day, and I thought that might have affected her choice. Had I unwittingly neglected her? I wasn't sure, but something felt wrong. If I wasn't meeting her needs, why didn't she talk to me about it? Why not say, "I need to move on"? And be honest? I had too many questions and too few answers. So I made a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was what I decided on. I wasn't at the hotel to cause trouble. She wasn't worth that anymore. I had received advice warning me that acting out could lead to negative outcomes. Instead, I was there to find closure, to free myself from the pain, and maybe give her something to think about. You might want to know a bit about me. I'm David Walters. I'm 31 years old, and I grew up in Albany. I work as a doctor in the emergency room at the city's main hospital. At least I used to. I have family nearby, a mother, father, and brother. I also have a wife. I recently asked for some time away from work to recharge. I'm worn out. I haven't told Diane, as she seemed indifferent. My doctor suggested the break to manage my stress before it affected my health. I've been stretched too thin, and finding out about my wife's choices pushed me to take a break. My wife is Diane Walters. She's 30 years old and works at a national bank in the city. We live in a nice 2-bedroom apartment near the hospital, and thankfully we don't have kids. Diane is about 5'8" inches tall with long, thick brunette hair and is attractive, easily drawing attention from others. We met in college, and I was interested in her right away. It was in an English class I took during my second year. I mostly wanted to get to know Diane. I asked her out, and we hit it off until now. After college, we lived together for almost 2 years and married just after I finished medical school. I was lucky not to have the heavy debt many students face, thanks to my family's support. I worked hard every summer to earn money and promised to repay my parents once I graduated. My family is doing well. My father runs a successful construction business. I worked for him in the summers to help with my tuition. I do know how to work hard. Now I'm on 18-hour shifts at the hospital, and I'm on call most of my days off. But you're probably more interested in what's happening now than my work history. You want to know about my wife at the Hilton Hotel. You want to know what I'll do about her. Well, it's about to happen. I mentioned earlier that I knew she was with someone else for some time. Why hadn't I acted sooner? That's a good question. I went through many emotions about losing my marriage before deciding what I truly wanted to do. At first, I was shocked by what Diane had chosen. I thought we were a team. I thought we shared the same goals and dreams. Then I learned she was involved with this Darren guy. What happened? We had talked about starting a family many times. We even discussed names for potential children and looked at houses in the suburbs. We talked about her taking maternity leave once we had a baby. We considered whether it would be best for her to stay home with the kids. Her mother had done the same for her and her siblings. We started saving for a house and to prepare for a baby. My salary at the hospital was growing quickly. Last year, I earned $120,000 and paid my taxes while repaying my parents nearly $10,000. Diane also had a good salary at the bank, making about $80,000. We were in a strong financial position, and as an ER doctor, I expected to earn much more in a few years. We shared dreams, made plans, and told each other that we loved one another every day. I thought my wife loved me, but now I'm not so sure. I discovered Diane's relationship by chance. A nurse from the ER saw Diane at a restaurant with another man. She recognized Diane from a Christmas party at the hospital last year. I watched as Diane and her companion walked through the hotel lobby towards the elevators. I noted the floor number as they entered. I took a moment to think about my plan. I knew I had to deal with what happened in my life. I couldn't stand the disrespect anymore, so tonight I needed to take action. I went to the front desk and asked them to reach Mr. Darren Ranger, who was with Diane. He ran a local landscaping business and seemed successful. Unfortunately, it looked like this success led him to start a relationship with my wife. Diane had been seeing Darren for almost 2 years, and I was shocked to find out. I learned about their connection through a nurse who mentioned she saw Diane and Darren together at a restaurant. She recognized him because his company had worked for her husband. The nurse's comment surprised me completely. I brought this up with Diane a few days later, pretending to ask casually about the restaurant. I didn't let on that I knew about Darren. I noticed Diane looked different for a moment, but quickly brushed it off. The following week, I talked to my dad about my worries. He was taken aback that Diane would act this way, and we agreed he shouldn't say anything to my mom. I also confided in my boss at the hospital about my situation. She suggested I take some time off to sort things out. She was disappointed in Diane, but understood that such issues can happen. We decided on a 3-month leave, with a plan to revisit my work situation later. I even spoke to the staff psychiatrist, who agreed that taking a break was a good idea. Then I reached out to an investigative agency to learn more about Diane's activities. Within a week, they provided details about what she was up to, where she went, and how often. I discovered that Darren had been booking a room regularly, and Diane was often with him. The last thing I did was go to my bank, not the one Diane worked at, to withdraw as much money as I could without closing my account. I had my own credit card, so I didn't need to worry about that. Realizing my wife was unfaithful, I decided it was time to act. I knew Diane would meet Darren after work. She thought I was working late, so they wouldn't be out for long. That morning, right after she left, I packed what I needed and went to the parking garage to get my motorcycle. I loaded a few more items into my Subaru Outback and asked my dad to pick it up later and store it for me. I wasn't taking a lot, just what I needed for the next few months on the road. The rest of the day was about deciding what to keep and what to leave behind. It felt like a major loss the end of my marriage. My bike is a 2016 Honda Africa Twin, perfect for long trips. I only needed a couple of changes of clothes, a toothbrush, my rain gear, and my iPad. I planned to avoid freeways and enjoy the countryside. I would sleep in budget hotels, motels, and bed and breakfasts, eating at local places. I wanted to take breaks at interesting spots along the way. My father always says that change can be refreshing, and if there was ever a time for that, it was now. My route would take me through North America, starting along the New England coast and into Canada, then taking the ferry to Newfoundland. I would explore the island and then travel through New Brunswick to Quebec, Ontario, and west across the prairies and Rocky Mountains to British Columbia. From BC, I planned to go down the coast to San Diego, then find my way through the mountains back to the Midwest and return to Albany. I estimated this journey would take about 3 or 4 months, and I hoped to have processed my feelings by then and be ready to return to work. I was even thinking about applying to Doctors Without Borders for a year or two, looking for a new kind of experience. There had to be better places to do meaningful work than the ER in Albany. For now, I had a situation to handle. I went back to the desk to speak with Darren Ranger. The clerk called his room, and after a few rings, he picked up. I took the phone from the clerk. Here we go. Could I speak with Diane Walters, please? He hesitated. There's no one here by that name. I think you have a wrong number. Just tell her there has been a family emergency. What? I raised my voice. Just tell her that her husband has passed away. There was silence on the other end, but I could hear noise in the background. I repeated, louder this time. Just convey that her husband has passed. Then I hung up. The desk clerk looked shocked as I took back the phone. I smiled at her, thanked her, and walked out of the hotel. My motorcycle was out front. I put on my riding gear and helmet and waited a moment. Soon enough, Diane rushed out of the hotel. It was dark enough that she wouldn't see me or the motorcycle as she dashed away. She quickly jumped into a taxi. I assumed she was headed to our apartment now, just hers. I was off to find my new start. Diane. Oh no. Someone told Darren that David had passed. I had to get home right away. I got dressed quickly and ran to the elevator. It felt like it took forever, and as soon as the doors opened, I hurried down the hall, struggling with my key. Once inside, I called David's name and searched every room, but he wasn't there. I sat at the table trying to catch my breath, heart racing. I reached for my phone to call his father. That's when I saw an envelope on the table with my name on it. I opened it to find a single piece of paper and David's wedding ring. He knows. I unfolded the paper and read, "Diane, you can now consider me gone. Our marriage had clearly ended some time ago, and I have moved on. I've taken what I needed. The rest is yours. I've told the management I no longer live here, so you can choose to stay or leave. It's up to you. Don't try to find me. I'm taking a break from work and from our relationship. It's clear you are not dedicated to our marriage anymore. I wish you well. David." One last thing, my lawyer will contact you with some information you might want to think about. What am I going to do now? I never thought David would learn about Darren. This situation got out of hand. My connection with Darren wasn't serious. It was just for fun. David worked long hours, and even when we spent time together, many things got in the way of our bond. I felt lonely for attention. I thought once David had more time and we settled into a routine, we could rebuild our relationship. That plan has fallen apart. Darren was charming, and it was easy to get drawn to him. The idea of seeing him now and then seemed fine at the time. I tried calling David's cell phone but found out his number was no longer working. I called his parents for help, but they weren't very helpful. His father told me David had left and to not bother them. Looking around the apartment, I noticed most of David's things were gone. The furniture was still there, but his closet was empty, some books were missing, and I found a couple of black trash bags in the kitchen. When I opened them, I saw they contained David's belongings, items he had chosen to leave behind. I felt lost. I sat at the table, realizing my life felt like it was falling apart. I had made big mistakes. I decided I would visit his family the next day and see if I could sort things out. I tried reaching out to a few of his friends without success. They thought he was busy at work and hadn't seen him in weeks. I couldn't contact his brother either. I searched the refrigerator and found a half bottle of wine. I poured a glass and sat at the table, looking at a note and David's wedding ring. I felt foolish, trying to think of ways to make things right. Whatever was ahead, I knew it wouldn't be easy. David. I didn't travel far that first night. It was almost 10 when I saw my wife leave the hotel and get into a taxi, not realizing I wasn't at work. I started my motorcycle, which has an automatic transmission for easier riding, especially over long distances. It was a strong bike, and I made sure to ride safely and stay aware of my surroundings. Being alert is important for safety since I had seen too many accidents caused by careless driving. Right now, my destination was close by. I was headed to a nearby Holiday Inn Express, looking for some comfort after a long day. It felt both fitting and ironic that this hotel represented a new beginning in my life. Diane, I left the apartment early and drove to David's parents' house, ringing the doorbell. I saw David's car outside, which made me think he might be home. Miriam, his mother, answered the door, saw me, and quickly closed it again. I kept ringing the doorbell until John, David's father, finally opened it. "What do you want?" he asked sharply. "Please, I need to talk to David. I have to see him." John frowned. "You're too late. He left last night. I wouldn't tell you where he is even if I knew. I just need to talk. If he would listen, I know we could work through this. Do you really believe you can just have an affair and expect everything to be okay? Leave now." With that, he shut the door. I sat on the step, thinking about my next move. After a moment, I rang the doorbell again. When John came back, I quickly said, "Please tell him I'm eager to talk. Just ask him to call me." I then went back to my car, hoping John would pass along my message, but soon I realized he wouldn't. When I returned to the apartment, I noticed a letter taped to the door. It was from David's lawyer, telling me that I had been removed from his health insurance and that finances had been divided, with David's share taken from the accounts. The letter also said any life insurance policies had been changed to name his parents as beneficiaries. It stated that David Walters wanted no further contact with Diane Walters. Any communication from me should be in writing and sent to his lawyer. Those letters would be held until David decided to receive them. The letter mentioned that I could seek a divorce based on abandonment after 1 year, which would be in 365 days from this date. If I wanted to start the process, I should have my representative contact Leanne Collins. Any actions for David would be done at that time. Have a nice day. That made it clear that my husband was finished with me. We had been together for almost 8 years, married for almost 4, and that was the end. I had made a serious mistake, and now I had to face the results. All weekend, I tried to reach David's brother, his friends, and his colleagues at the hospital. I even went to the hospital to look for someone who might know where David was. I talked to a nurse named Rhonda. She said she couldn't chat right then because they were busy, but invited me to her house the next day to talk. I thanked her and left. The next afternoon, I went to the address she gave me, and she welcomed me inside. She offered me a drink, and I chose ice water to keep my mind clear. She mentioned that she had told David she saw me in a restaurant with Darren and that David was curious about him. Rhonda said David wanted to know more about Darren. She told me he was married with a family and that his company had done some work in her backyard. Beyond that, she didn't know much. She looked at me with surprise and sympathy. I felt that she thought I had made a mistake that could hurt my marriage. Her kids were running around the kitchen as we talked, and she occasionally called out to them before turning back to me. After a few more questions, I thanked her for her time and stood to leave. Right before I walked out, she mentioned that it was known at the hospital that David wouldn't be back to work for some time. She watched as I got in my car and drove away. 1 month later, David, Newfoundland is a beautiful place. The views are stunning, and the people are very friendly. I had been on the island for over a week, enjoying the roads, the sights, and the food. While driving on the Avalon Peninsula, I had a close encounter with a moose that stepped onto the road. I avoided it and stopped to watch as it carefully moved away. People had warned me about moose near the highways, so I made sure to travel only during the day. I was in a place called Petty Harbor, enjoying an ice cream cone after visiting Cape Spear, the most easterly point of North America, when I got a flat tire on my bike. 4 different people stopped to help me, something you wouldn't see back in Albany. I called the Auto Club, CAA in Canada, and they sent a truck to take my bike to a repair shop. The shop was in St. John's, a larger city with good hotels and great restaurants. I found a clean and comfortable room at a small downtown hotel and spent my time exploring while my bike was being fixed. It was a nice chance to relax, do some laundry, and recharge. While picking up my motorcycle from the repair shop, I met a woman named Emma Fisher, who was also traveling across the country on her bike. She was from Berlin and was on her way to Morocco. She had traveled all across Canada and was preparing her bike to be shipped. She would fly to Casablanca and get her motorcycle when she arrived. The shipping would take about a week. Emma was wearing her riding gear, which suited her well. I guessed she was around 30 or 35 years old, about my height, which is 5'11". She reminded me of a British actress known for her action films, and her charming German accent was captivating. After we talked about our motorcycle trips, I learned that she wouldn't be leaving for 3 more days. I invited her to dinner, and she accepted. Since we were both staying in nearby hotels, we agreed to meet at a restaurant called the Salty Cod, which felt perfect given the location. We enjoyed our meal and drinks while getting to know each other better. The next morning, I woke up in my hotel room feeling happy and at peace. It was the best night I had in a long time. I felt good for the first time in a while. We spent the day talking about travel and the excitement of exploring the world on a motorcycle. Her smile, her voice, and her eyes really drew me in. After sharing a bit about myself and listening to her stories, we discussed our travel plans for the coming months. My goal was to travel around North America. She had already ridden almost 40,000 kilometers and planned another 20,000 before returning to Germany. Her adventure included a loop around Africa, which seemed more exciting than my own plans. As I spent the day with Emma, I thought about the idea of changing my plans. I even called my dad to tell him I was thinking about heading to Africa. I thought it would be better to talk instead of just sending a text to him and Mom. We spoke for almost an hour, and by the end, both of them encouraged me to follow my dreams. It was my life, and I needed to choose its path. When I was a kid, my dad often said that parents could help dreams become real. I didn't fully understand that until I grew up, but I always found it both funny and sadly true. Yes, I have a brother who is 2 years older than me. He is married with 3 kids and works with my dad in the construction business. Paul is dedicated to his work, and his family respects him. His wife, Marcy, decided to stay home to raise the kids. and I think that was a good choice for their family. She is a wonderful mother, and my parents love her. Their children are cherished by their grandparents. But back to my plans. That night, I asked Emma if she would like company on her trip around Africa. I wasn't sure if she had someone else to meet, but I decided to ask anyway. She smiled and said, "Are you saying you want to go to Africa?" I replied, "Yes, I do." "What happened to your trip to North America?" "Well, you've shown me that Africa might be more exciting to visit. It's a bit of a stretch for me, but I need to push my boundaries. I don't know if I'll succeed or not, but I want to find out. I need some space from my old life." "You have to think about your motorcycle. It's still here and has to get to Africa." I quickly called the bike shop to see if there was room in the shipping container for my motorcycle. The owner called me back after about an hour and said if I could come in to sign some papers, he could have my bike ready to ship the next morning. Sending a motorcycle is usually simple, but it does cost money. 2 days later, I flew with Emma from St. John's to Toronto. Then we continued on to Paris, and after a short wait, on to Lisbon and Casablanca. When David said he wanted to join me in Africa, I realized I needed to learn more about him first. I called a friend in Berlin who knows people in the local police. She agreed to check on David Walters from Albany, New York, to confirm his story. My friend got back to me quickly, saying he was indeed genuine. He works in the emergency department at the main hospital in Albany and was on a break for 3 months, with the chance to extend it to 6 months. He comes from a respected family in Albany and is separated from his wife due to her unfaithfulness. He was a top student in medical school and does not have any children. It was impressive what we could find out with some effort. She even sent me a photo of him for confirmation. Feeling reassured, I became comfortable traveling with David. Knowing he was a doctor made me feel better in case of any health issues during our trip. I understood he was likely hurt by his wife's actions, just as I had my own experiences with betrayal in a past relationship. Traveling alone has its ups and downs. You can go wherever you want, but it sometimes feels lonely. I've been on this trip for several months, covering over 30,000 kilometers, and I plan to write a book about my motorcycle travels as a woman on her own. I've been documenting everything with photos, videos, and a detailed journal, although I know editing it all for publication will take time. While it's exciting for me, the story needs to be interesting enough for others to want to read it. A friend back home suggested I share some of my videos online, maybe on YouTube or another platform. David has a lot to learn about long-distance motorcycle travel, and my first task is to help him get better gear. I called a motorcycle dealer in Casablanca, and they have much of what he will need. They also know other shops nearby that can help. This should be fun traveling with Dr. David. I hope to be a good guide for him. David's parents have made it clear they don't want to talk to me anymore. They won't tell me where David is. I'm unsure about our marriage. It's becoming obvious that things might be over between us. He hasn't started divorce proceedings yet, and I don't know if I want to be the one to file first. What if he returns and has changed his mind? What will I do if he offers me another chance? Will he ever trust me again? I feel very lonely since Darren said we can't see each other anymore. His wife was getting suspicious, and he worried she might investigate. So that's over. He was also worried that David might have mentioned our situation. My social life is almost non-existent, and I've had enough. I need to go out and meet people. My coworkers often go out after work on Fridays, and I plan to join them. I need a change of scenery. Casablanca is a fantastic place. It's the main port of Morocco, located on the North African Atlantic coast. The city has about 4 million people and a mix of old and new. I found us a budget hotel to stay in while we waited for the ship to arrive with our motorcycles. Emma took me shopping for some necessary gear, and we explored the city, trying the local food and learning about its history and culture. The ship was delayed by 2 days because of bad weather, so we ended up staying in Casablanca for 8 nights. Some of those nights were among the highlights of my life. Almost 2 months have passed without a word from David. I need to start figuring out my next steps. I guess he was serious about our situation. I wonder what I did wrong. After all, he was hardly ever around for me. His work at the hospital seemed to be all he cared about. I have needs too, but with our busy schedules, we barely spent time together. Darren came by the bank yesterday to see me. He believes his wife is no longer suspicious, so we might be able to meet again. When I told him my husband had left me, he suggested we stay in my apartment to save money on hotels. I miss having companionship, and I feel like I'm going a little crazy. I hope things would work out with David, but since he's not around, I might have to consider Darren. David, I can't believe how beautiful Morocco is. I'm also loving my time with Emma. The more I learn about her, the more I admire her. She is smart and resourceful, and she rides motorcycles like a pro. She's been teaching me a lot about adventure riding. She mentioned she had a long-term partner who chose a different path in life, and that helped her move on too. I picked up some essential gear in Casablanca. I have extra gas and oil for the bike, enough water and tools to fix any issues like flat tires. My bike has protective metal plates, LED lights, a battery pack, and booster cables since neither of our bikes can start without a kick. I also got a GPS to help us find unpaved routes and some good riding gear, a sleeping bag, and an inflatable pad for camping. Plus, I bought a small gas stove to cook food and heat water, which is really important. We plan to stay at small bed and breakfast places whenever we can and enjoy local food. That became quite an adventure when we arrived in Morocco. My body needed some time to get used to the new diet, and I had to think carefully about my comfort for the first few days. Emma found it funny since she's used to different foods. I even bought some medicine to help with my digestion. I remembered from my medical training that staying hydrated is crucial while traveling. I drank plenty of water and everything was fine. I received an email from my lawyer updating me about Diane. She hadn't tried to contact me, so it seemed like she understood that we were finished or was figuring out her next steps. I didn't care what she did. I just knew I was happy with what I was doing now. I didn't need a wife who spent her time with someone else. If she wanted to move on, she could at least tell me directly. After leaving Casablanca, we headed south toward Marrakesh. It's about 250 kilometers on the main highway, the A3, but we chose a prettier route through the port city of El Hadida. The weather was warm, and the ride was enjoyable along the winding roads. El Hadida was beautiful, and we stayed there for a night before continuing to El Badouza, a coastal town. Being near the water made it cooler than further inland, which helped me adjust to the area. Emma had never been to this part of Morocco, so it was a great chance for us to explore together. Emma speaks several languages: German, English, French, Spanish, and a little Arabic. She used all of them during our time in North Africa. I love her German accent. It adds a special touch to our conversations. The journey from Casablanca to Marrakesh took us 5 days and over 1,300 kilometers. It was, without a doubt, the best ride of my life. We stopped at Safi and Essaouira before heading to the big city. Marrakesh, with around 1 million people, is fascinating, a mix of old and new. Since neither of us had been there, I suggested we stay for 3 days and explore. I found a reasonably priced hotel in the city with secure parking for our motorcycles. I wanted to keep them safe. We checked on the bikes daily, and everything was in order. Emma rode a BMW F800 GS, suitable for long distances. I might think about getting one of those later, but for now, my Africa twin was doing well in Africa. Diane. It's been over 2 months, and I haven't heard from David or anyone he knows. I've tried contacting his family, but no one responded. I called his lawyer, but she only asked if I was ready to start the divorce or if I wanted to send him a letter. I hadn't written anything because I wasn't ready for a divorce yet. I still wanted to talk to David and see if we could work things out. After all, he's been a great partner. I've had a few acquaintances over to my apartment, and some might judge me for it. But maybe it's understandable since my husband seems to have left me without any word about his plans or if he'll return. It would be nice to hear from him. David, Africa is so different from what I knew growing up. The culture, language, landscape, and food, everything is unique. Yet it also feels surprisingly similar to home. People everywhere want to care for their families and provide for them. Everyone seeks a basic way to live. Parents everywhere hope for a better life for their children. Traveling with Emma has opened my eyes. She loves adventure and thrives on challenges. I'm learning to face my fears about trying new things. I grew up in a safe place, and not everyone has that experience. Since I started my sabbatical, I've realized that people everywhere rely on their loved ones and take pride in their homes. Africa is a deep learning experience. Travel, in general, shows you new ways of thinking. And I get to experience all of this with a remarkable companion. Emma is a wonderful travel partner, She is enthusiastic and caring and approaches life with energy while showing great wisdom. I've found a new excitement for life, a desire to explore that I know will change me forever. Emma Fisher. I'm really enjoying my time with David on this trip around Africa. He offers a fresh viewpoint, always surprised by his experiences here compared to how he grew up in the U.S. He has worked hard to do the right thing in his life, and it's clear he feels let down by some unexpected situations. He believed his wife would support him in his job and the choices they made together. But she seems to have lost her way. I don't know her, and my goal isn't to take her husband from her, but she has made choices that have pushed them apart. We have only been together for a few weeks, and if things continue like this, it will be hard to say goodbye when he returns to his job at the hospital. I made plans for myself before starting this adventure, and I want to stick to them. I promised a publisher back home that I would write a travel guide for women who want to explore the world by motorcycle. I don't expect to make a lot of money, but I am enjoying the journey and feel I'm good at it. David. We are traveling from Marrakech to Laayoune, a distance of about 900 kilometers, mainly along the coast. Some areas are just dust and open spaces. The scenery is breathtaking and inspiring. As a newcomer, I need to respect my surroundings and stay alert. My American passport doesn't hold the same value here. A passport from a European country is more respected. Border guards often look surprised to see an American here on a motorcycle. One customs official asked why I left America for this place. I smiled and pointed to Emma. He laughed and nodded as if he understood. We camped for 2 nights on the way to Laayoune, careful to set up away from the road to avoid trouble. I didn't sleep well the first night. Every little sound kept me awake. By the second night, I was so tired that I finally slept better. In the morning, after taking care of some basics and making coffee, I felt much improved. Finding gas for our motorcycles and food and water for ourselves was very important, so we stopped whenever we could to refill. We always used cash and made sure to keep our purchases low-key. It's wise not to stand out. I wouldn't say West Africa is dangerous. It's no more risky than some areas in the U.S., but it's smart to stay aware, especially since 2 people on valuable motorcycles may attract attention. My riding gear protects me from falls but wouldn't help much in other situations. I know the harm that can happen. I've seen it too many times in the emergency room back home. Traveling through Western Sahara and Mauritania was unlike anything I had experienced before. The landscape was dry, dusty, and both rough and beautiful. As we rode, I could talk to Emma through our Bluetooth helmets. She shared her knowledge of the area as if she had lived there forever. As a travel magazine editor, she did her homework before leaving home. I was intrigued and captivated by her excitement. After Laayoune, our next stop was Dakar in Senegal, over 1,800 kilometers away. That meant 4 days of challenging riding. I had begun to ride longer distances but struggled with the heat and dust. Emma kept reminding me to drink water regularly. I had a camelback that held 4 liters, which I emptied daily, plus more when we stopped. I had to pull over several times, which made me smile when Emma did the same. I tried to take a funny picture of her, but she quickly came after my phone, and I couldn't help but laugh. I could share more about the ride through Western Sahara and Mauritania, but it would be repetitive. The long stretches had wide open spaces with little around. We carried extra fuel since few places offered gas. My bike used more fuel than Emma's, so I planned to add an extra gas tank for future trips. At one point, we had a flat tire and spent about 3 hours fixing it by the roadside. We spent 3 nights in our tent, and it was interesting how we could connect with each other without the comforts of home. Staying clean in the heat was a challenge, but we managed to wash up using just a little water and soap. We brushed our teeth with only a cup of water each. It's important to stay clean, and we felt relieved to deal with limited resources. When we crossed the border into Senegal at Diama, we learned that the crossing at Rosso was tougher, requiring various fees to get across the river. Other bikers told us about the bridge at Diama, where it was cheaper to cross. Not far from there is St. Louis, a city quite different from what many might know. I had read that the city was divided into sections, some on islands. When we arrived, I noticed the poverty around, but crossing the bridge led to a richer part of the city. We found a budget-friendly hotel, Hotel de la Poste, parked our bikes, and settled in. The hotel was next to a large government building, which meant more police presence, making it safer. I told Emma I needed some rest after our long journey across the desert. She smiled and agreed that we both could use a good sleep in a comfortable bed. We spent the next 2 days relaxing, not sleeping much but enjoying meals and the hotel pool. The hotel also offered a laundry service, which helped us clean our clothes. You might think that a visitor from the U.S. would have a fancy experience in Africa. However, many of the bigger homes in that part of St. Louis were owned by local Senegalese people, not by Westerners. Also, prices here can be lower than in the USA hotel room that costs $50 a night here, would usually cost $200 back in the States. I often checked my email when I found a good Wi-Fi connection. I wanted to see if my family had sent any messages or if my lawyer had any updates. Most of the time, my parents were asking where I was and if I was okay. This time, though, my lawyer told me that Diane had asked about where I was and when I would be back in Albany. I had asked my family to keep my location a secret, and my lawyer was following those instructions too. She mentioned that Diane had not started any divorce process yet, but I had a feeling that might change soon. Regardless of the situation, my life was mine to live as I chose. If Diane did not file for divorce before I returned from my trip, I planned to do it myself. For now, I was enjoying my journey. Emma was a great companion. I didn't know what the future held for us. Her plans might not include me. Still, our unexpected meeting in Canada was a lovely surprise. Emma Fisher. After our nice time in St. Louis, we had to travel again. Our next stop was Dakar, just 300 kilometers away. However, our plans quickly changed when we saw an accident ahead. A bus had flipped over. A scooter carrying a family hit a pothole, causing them to lose control and crash into the bus. After a moment of surprise, we pulled our bikes to the side and took off our helmets. David rushed to help. He found a family in trouble. The father was trapped under the bus while the children were hurt, and the mother lay unconscious nearby. David quickly started helping the mother while telling others to check on the father. I grabbed our first aid kits from our bike and handed them to David, who stayed calm and focused. Meanwhile, the father was not moving much and needed urgent help. The police arrived but seemed slow to do anything, mostly managing traffic. David urged them to call for ambulances, but they didn't seem very interested. Thankfully, the bus had only a few passengers who were slowly getting out, some with minor injuries. Eventually, the police tried to lift the bus a little to free the father, who was in serious condition. After some time, 2 ambulances came, and the mother, father, and their children were taken to a hospital. David and I stayed by the roadside for a moment to drink some water. David looked at some cuts and bruises on other passengers from the bus. A police car eventually took the bus driver away, probably to get medical care. One of the police officers, who had a high rank, approached David to talk. He spoke pretty good English and asked David several questions while gesturing. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I soon found out. The officer wanted to know why David was helping the injured. When David explained that he was a doctor, the officer stepped back to make a call. After a conversation, he came back and asked if he could follow David. The hospital had requested David to stop there and discuss the injuries of the family from the scooter. It seems they didn't have a doctor available. We got on our bikes and followed the police car to the hospital. It wasn't the kind of hospital I was used to seeing in Europe, but it wasn't that bad either. The building was old and could use some improvements, but it looked fairly clean, and the hallways were tidy. The nurse David spoke with was letting him know they couldn't take any more patients. David looked around, found what he needed to treat some cuts on the kids, and then motioned for me to help him. I wasn't sure what to do, but he guided me well. Helping out was fairly simple once you got the hang of it. I assisted David for what felt like a long time, but I knew it was just a couple of hours. This was a new experience for me, but it's amazing what you can manage when needed. David was impressive. I almost forgot he was a doctor until he urgently guided others at the scene. When urgency strikes, most people step back. David stepped forward. We spent 3 more days in St. Louis. David spent a lot of time at the hospital, seeing patients from the accident and many others who came in. I learned from a nurse that news spread quickly about a doctor helping people, allowing many who usually wouldn't see a doctor to get care. David worked for over 30 hours without a break. I returned to our hotel to rest. It took David another night to recover and get ready to continue our journey. When we left the town, it felt a bit sad knowing the people wouldn't have a regular doctor they could count on. David back on the road south brought a whole new set of adventures. Our planned stop was Dakar. I had read a bit about it online and was excited to see the city. Dakar is the capital of Senegal, and it has about 4 million people. I was amazed by the differences in the city. There was clear wealth next to areas of great need. It felt strange to see fancy cars and worn-out scooters on the same streets, yet they seemed to coexist without much conflict. People were focused on their daily lives, trying to provide for their families and earn a living. It reminded me of my experiences since leaving Albany, but now my view had widened greatly. Maybe I had Diane to thank for my change in perspective. My time with Emma was helping me see things differently each day. I insisted we stay at a hotel by the beach. Until then, we had been sharing the costs for our lodgings. I sensed Emma might not have much money based on our talks, so I offered to cover it. I told her I needed some time to relax after St. Louis. The cost didn't worry me. We spent 3 days enjoying the tourist sites and the beach. It felt refreshing. Emma shared that traveling with me made her very happy, and I told her that she was making a positive impact on my life. But then reality hit. I checked my email and saw a message from the hospital, from Chief Administrator, Albany General Hospital to Dr. David Walters. David, I hope you have enjoyed your time off and feel rested for your return to work. Our agreement was for 3 months, with a chance to extend it to 6 if we both agree. However, I need to inform you that we require you back by next month at the latest. One of your colleagues is unwell, and the ER department needs your help. I've managed to cover the gap for a few weeks, but we really need you back. Please let me know if there are any problems, and I will help you as best as I can. Contact me when you can. I apologize for interrupting your plans, but we truly need you back soon. Dr. Laura Johnson, Chief Administrator. This was disappointing. All good times eventually come to an end, and my adventure was yet another casualty of reality. I thought I could delay replying to the email for a few days and enjoy the rest of our trip. So, that's what I did. Emma Fisher. The journey south ahead looked tough and a bit uncertain, especially since David mentioned he needed to return to the U.S. for his job at the hospital. We discussed the chance of me going back to Germany once he left. Then I suggested we skip south for a bit to Namibia and drive from Windhoek to Cape Town. We found a bike shop in Dakar that could arrange to ship our bikes by plane and made plans for them to be loaded onto a cargo plane in 2 days. So that's exactly what we did. The flight to Windhoek was memorable. The airplane was old and the pilot and co-pilot looked quite young. The weather was windy, and we were relieved to land at Windhoek Airport and see our motorcycles. We got our gear together, paid the handlers to keep everything safe, and hit the road. The drive south to Cape Town took just 5 days. We both knew our time together was coming to an end, so we made the most of it. Spending time with David was wonderful. We enjoyed each other's company a lot, and our bond seemed to grow stronger with each moment. I found myself drawn to him. I appreciated our time together. He was an amazing person who left a mark on my life. Yet I knew I needed to return to my responsibilities. I had a book to write and many hours of video to edit. The publisher wanted to see some progress, and the money they had given me was running low. I had to go home and take care of things there. David arranged for us to fly to Frankfurt, where we would part ways. He would fly to New York, and I would take a train to Berlin. The train from the airport to Berlin took about 5 hours. On our last night together, we dropped off our motorcycles at the shop mine for storage, and David's to be sent back to the U.S. It was a bittersweet day, and I saw that David was hesitant to leave. At Frankfurt Airport, we were quiet. When I looked at him, he seemed sad. His eyes showed so much. I reminded him he needed to catch his next flight. He gently touched my arm and whispered that he cared for me. In that moment, I knew this was not the last time I would see this special man. Albany, New York. Dave! Dave! I heard my brother Paul calling. I was in the hotel lobby looking for him. It was my second day back in the U.S. after coming from Africa. You look great! Where have you been? Paul said. I was out of the country. How did you know I was here? I didn't. I have a meeting with a client here soon. Mom and Dad mentioned you were taking a break from work, but they didn't say where. What's new with Diane? That's a long story. Well, you're coming over for dinner tonight, and you're going to tell me everything. I didn't argue. I figured it was time to reconnect with my life here. Okay, a home-cooked meal sounds nice. We talked a bit more. Then I said I needed to see my boss at the hospital. Paul took out his phone, probably calling Marcy to let her know I was coming for dinner. I hadn't told him not to call Diane, but I trusted he wouldn't. It was a short walk to the hospital, and the morning was lovely. Oddly enough, I passed right by Diane's workplace on my way there. The hospital administrator, Dr. Johnson, was glad to see me. She mentioned that she had received a letter from the government of Senegal through the U.S. Department of State, thanking her for the help provided by the American doctor in St. Louis. She was curious, so I shared the story about a family on a scooter, a father, mother, 3 kids, and a propane tank. She found it all quite strange. I figured the letter they sent was their way of thanking me for my help at the hospital. The ER boss updated me on the situation, and I was scheduled to work starting tomorrow, with 12-hour shifts for the next 6 days. Great. Those hours often stretched longer due to busy nights. Tonight I plan to visit my brother and his wife, enjoy their food, play with their kids, and maybe have a drink or two. I knew they'd have lots of questions, and I was ready for them. Marcy welcomed me with a warm hug as I entered. "David, how are you? We've missed you." "I'm good, thanks." After I gave the kids some small gifts I brought, they went off to play. Now it was time for the real conversation. Marcy got right to the point. "What happened with you and Diane? Why did you leave?" "Hi, Marcy. Nice to see you, too. Do you have a drink in the fridge?" Paul exchanged a look with Marcy and went to the kitchen. He returned with 3 drinks. I took a sip while my sister-in-law and brother gazed at me intently. I started, "So, you want to know what's been going on with me? What have Mom and Dad told you?" Marcy's expression showed her concern and curiosity. "They said nothing. I tried to talk to Diane, but she hasn't shared much. She wanted information from me, and I had none. All we knew was that you took a break from work and went somewhere by yourself. What's really going on?" She was eager for answers. I spent the next half hour giving them a brief summary of my last 5 months. I included some details about Diane, but avoided uncomfortable parts about her choices. I didn't think they needed to know everything, especially since they might not care about her anymore now that the truth was out. We had dinner and shared another drink while they asked about my travels, especially my time in Africa. I shared some stories and mentioned Emma, saying she was back in Berlin working while I was in Albany. After dinner, I told them I would look for a place to stay temporarily until I sorted out the divorce and figured out what I wanted next. My time with Emma helped me see life differently. I knew I couldn't just return to the hospital and pretend everything was fine. Being back in Albany reminded me of my marriage's struggles and how Diane had moved on easily. I didn't share my feelings about Diane with Paul and Marcy, but I felt a deep sense of betrayal. I had trusted her completely, and I promised myself not to let that happen again. That was one of many realizations I had while riding my motorcycle in Africa. I also realized that there are many good women out there, women with integrity who would communicate honestly. If Diane didn't want to be married, she should have said so openly, so we could have parted amicably. I drove back to my hotel and finally got a good night's sleep. Tomorrow, I would search for an apartment. Diane, I heard from a coworker that David was back in the city. They knew someone who had seen him at the hospital. I tried to call his parents, but the answer was always the same. I wasn't welcome. Feeling desperate, I decided to wait by the hospital ER entrance in hopes of seeing him. I spent 4 nights parked there, and I couldn't believe how busy it was. There were a constant stream of ambulances bringing people in need. To pass the time, I brought a book and a snack, but on the second night, I needed to find a restroom. I walked around until a security guard asked if I needed help. I took a chance and asked for David. He kindly explained that they couldn't share doctors' names without an appointment and directed me to the main entrance. I thanked him and left. On the 4th night, I finally spotted him walking from the parking area into the hospital. My heart raced, and I almost jumped out of the car to call his name, but he disappeared inside. I felt a sense of relief knowing he was back in the city. Now I had to figure out how to talk to him and convince him to come home. David. After a couple of days of searching, I found a nice little apartment close to the hospital. It was a small 1-bedroom, but it was furnished. All I needed were some sheets, towels, and groceries. I preferred a furnished place since I wasn't sure how long I'd stay. It had parking for my car and some security without a doorman. Getting back into the ER routine happened quickly. The steady flow of patients kept me very busy. Heart attacks and strokes were common, as many struggled with health problems. Well, that was life. All these patients and their insurance companies were paying my salary. 2 weeks after I got back to Albany, I called my lawyer to set up a meeting. 3 days later, we talked about getting a divorce from Diane. There wasn't much to split up, and I told her Diane could keep everything in the apartment we shared. I had already told Diane this when I left. My lawyer prepared the divorce papers, ready to file. I was surprised Diane hadn't started the divorce herself. I thought she would want to move on. After our meeting, I went back to my apartment. I realized my life outside work was going to be lonely. I decided I needed a hobby. I made a call and found out my motorcycle wouldn't arrive for several more months, so I began searching for another one. I spent some time online comparing motorcycles and decided to look at a KTM. We had 2 bike shops outside the city that sold them. On my day off, I drove to both and chose the 890 Adventure R. I asked them to get some accessories for long trips, storage boxes, extra lights, and a quick shift adapter. It was a great bike for both smooth roads and rough paths. It was a bit pricey, but I saw it as a smart investment. Diane. When I got home, I found a man in a suit waiting outside the building. As I walked closer, he looked at his phone and then asked, "Diane Walters?" "Yes. Who are you?" He handed me a large envelope saying, "You've been served." Before I could say anything, he stepped back, took a picture of me with the envelope, and quickly walked to his car. I had been expecting this moment. David. Here's a quick summary of divorce law in New York. You can file for a no-fault divorce if you and your spouse have been apart for at least a year, or if there has been an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage for at least 6 months. My lawyer emailed to tell me Diane had been served the divorce papers. Leanne thought I would hear from Diane's lawyer in about a week. Until then, there wasn't much to do. If Diane took her time, Leanne would act in court, and after a year, the petition would likely be approved. In this case, Diane's long-term affair meant there was a breakdown in our marriage. If she disagreed with the divorce, we just needed to live separately for another 6 months. Either way, the divorce would be finalized in about 6 months. Then my doorbell rang. Diane. I did something I probably shouldn't have. I followed David when he left the hospital at the end of his shift a couple of days ago to see where he was living now. It was only a few blocks from our apartment. Now that I knew where he was, I needed to find the courage to talk to him. I waited a few more days to gather my courage and put on a simple yet elegant outfit. I also brought along a 6-pack of his favorite beer and a bottle of white wine for myself. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the button for his apartment. After a few rings, he answered. "Hello? David, is that you? Who is this?" "It's me, Diane, your wife." Silence. "May I come up?" More silence. After what felt like forever, the door buzzer rang and I quickly entered the building. I took the elevator to his floor and walked to his apartment door. I knocked. "David." I wasn't surprised when someone buzzed my apartment. People often buzz in. Salespeople, religious callers, and politicians. However, this was unexpected. It was probably a mistake, but I let her in. When I heard the knock, I waited a few seconds before opening the door, needing to gather my thoughts. Many questions and feelings raced in my mind. Just before opening the door, I reminded myself that I had moved on. I opened the door and saw her. She looked tired but still familiar. My wife stood there, a reminder of our past. "Hello, Diane. What brings you here tonight?" "I wanted to talk to you. You're hard to find lately." I walked to the kitchen, noticing she had a bottle of wine. I set a glass on the counter. She handed me the bottle, and I opened it to pour some for her. She pulled out a beer for me, but I declined, mentioning that I was on call that night, and instead poured a glass of cola. I motioned for us to sit at the table. I figured it would be better to talk seriously about our marriage and the path we needed to take moving forward. Diane David got straight to the point. No small talk or niceties. He looked more serious than I had ever seen him. My stomach was tight as I began. "You scared me when you called the hotel and had Darren tell me you were dead. He didn't know who was calling and didn't recognize your voice. I was in shock when I got home and found your note and your wedding ring." I took his gold wedding ring out of my bag and placed it on the table. He just stared at it. He didn't touch it. It was too painful for him to handle. I tried to talk to your family, but they wouldn't talk to me. Your father just told me to go away. I guess I deserved that. I've been struggling ever since you left. David quickly replied, "What did you want me to do? I found out you had been with Darren Ranger for a long time, and you thought I should just ignore it. What kind of person do you think I am?" "Never mind, I know how you see me." It wasn't like that. What was it like then? I was lonely. You were always at the hospital, never home, and when you were, you seemed so tired, like you had no time for me. Does that mean you could ignore our marriage? Why couldn't you just talk to me and say you wanted to end it? Why keep lying for so long? David looked down at the table and avoided my gaze. It was hard not to understand why he would do that. He took a sip from his drink and then asked, "Have you signed the divorce papers?" "No, I don't want a divorce. I want us to be a family again. I still love you and want to stay your wife and the mother of our children." David laughed. "You must be kidding. Is this a joke?" "No, it's not a joke. I love you very much. I'm still your wife, and I want to make this work. I want us to live together again." He looked at me in disbelief. "You're really not seeing things clearly. I won't be your husband any longer than necessary. My lawyer is ready to finish the divorce without you. In New York, if we live apart for a year or 6 months, if we show that our marriage can't be saved, it's done. You've made that pretty clear. I've done all I can. It's over." "David, we could be good together. I know it." "No, we can't. You enjoy spending time with others too much for us to stay together. It's over. You can go back to what you enjoy." David stood up, showing that the conversation was finished. I drained my glass of wine, put it down, stood up, and inched closer to him. If he would just let me reach out to him, maybe it would help. I touched his arm gently, hoping to reconnect. His last words were, "Don't forget to take this," as he pointed to his wedding ring on the table. I picked it up, placed it in my bag, and left his apartment. At that moment, I understood it was truly over. David and I weren't going to build a life together anymore. I loved him, but I let him go for something that didn't matter. Darren wasn't worth it. I felt foolish. I deserved this. I need to sign the papers and let him go. David. As she walked out of my apartment, Emma tried to get closer to me. I didn't want anything to do with her. Now she expected us to act like nothing happened and be a couple again. That was not going to happen. The only thing I planned to do was let my lawyer complete the divorce so I could move on. I needed a long, hot shower to clear my mind, so I took one and then had a beer. "Emma, I've been really busy in Berlin, editing hours of video and putting it all together. Doing the voiceovers has been tricky. I'm doing everything in English and making a second version in German. Closed captioning has kept me busy, too." The last month went by quickly, and I didn't realize how much time had passed. I sent David some emails with short videos and photos from our time in Africa. He looks good, even in the one where he had a little accident with his bike, and we had a good laugh about it. I asked my friend to help me. She has a husband who works in the government and can find information about people. She found out some things about David before our trip to Africa. I needed to know if he was really who he said he was. I was relieved to learn that he was exactly who he claimed. So, I asked Ingrid if her husband Nick could get me an update on David. I know it was a bit sneaky, but I had my reasons. It took a week, but she gave me the info Nick found. It seems David is back at the hospital and his lawyer has filed for divorce. It was filed a few weeks ago, so under U.S. law, it will be finalized soon. That's good because I have some important news for him. But before I share it, I need to make sure some things are settled first. I really hope it's something he'll want to hear. David, hooray! I'm officially divorced. I have the papers in my hands. Now I feel free to focus on my life and my future. There are still things I need to check on. I've been getting calls and emails from Emma, updating me about her work on the book and videos. She sent a few clips, mostly of me doing silly things like dropping my bike or almost running into a small group of cows while sightseeing. No harm was done, but my riding partner laughed a lot. I've shared what's been happening in my life with her. We've chatted over the phone a few times. I told her about Diane's visit and how she hoped I would take her back. The lack of respect I faced in that relationship helped me decide to move on. I made my choice clear the moment I found out about her betrayal. Emma listened to my feelings, and I could tell she was getting restless. She said she had to go, but promised to email me soon about something important, but I'd have to wait a couple of weeks for details. I figured it must be about her book. Emma, I need to share my news with David, but not while he's still upset about his ex-wife. I want him focused on me. Maybe I need just a little more time. David, it's been a week since my divorce was settled, and I'm at Albany Airport, getting ready to fly to Chicago and then to London before finally heading to Berlin. It's about 15 hours on a plane, and I should arrive around noon tomorrow. I need to see Emma. It's been almost 2 months since we were together, and I want to talk to her and see if there's still something between us after our time in Africa. If not, I can return to my life and figure out my next steps. Doctors Without Borders are looking for doctors to work in different places around the world. They may not pay much, but I can manage. When I landed at Berlin-Brandenburg Airport, I went through customs, picked up my bag, and went out to get a taxi. I had booked a room at Hotel Parkview, right in downtown Alexanderplatz. It's a nice hotel, much better than where Emma and I stayed while in Africa. After checking in and cleaning up, I grabbed a bite to eat, then set out to find the building where Emma works. I knew it was downtown, but didn't have any idea how to get there, so I used my phone for directions. I saved the downtown map and started walking. It was almost 4 p.m. when I finally got to her building. I thought that if Emma wasn't happy to see me, I could explore the city a bit before my flight back to the U.S. I tried not to have high expectations about how she would react to my surprise visit. It was only a few blocks away, and it took about 15 minutes to get there. I went in and checked the office directory, then took the elevator to the right floor. I stepped into the lobby and walked up to a friendly young lady at the desk. She welcomed me in German. I smiled and asked if Emma Fisher was available. The young lady looked surprised. Her eyes widened, and it was clear I wasn't the usual visitor. She quickly picked up her phone and called someone. After a short, quick chat, she looked at me and said, "Emma or someone will be here shortly. Please have a seat in the waiting area." While I waited, several women walked by and gave me curious looks. It felt a bit odd, but I couldn't tell if I seemed out of place or if they were just noticing me. Another woman came over and said, "Dr. Walters?" I replied, "Yes, please come with me." It was easy to follow her as she led me through the office. That's when I remembered I had told the receptionist my name as David Walters, not Dr. Walters. It seemed like they knew more about me than I had expected. As we walked through the modern office with all its glass and steel, I noticed many women looking our way. I tried to confirm I looked all right, thinking maybe there had been an announcement about an American in the halls. After what felt like a long walk, I saw Emma coming around the corner, smiling widely. She rushed toward me and gave me a warm hug. Now everyone was watching us. "Oh my gosh, David, when did you come to Berlin?" she exclaimed. "A few hours ago. I went to my hotel to clean up first. I wanted to make a good impression." I was waiting for her to ask why I was there, which would help me understand how our relationship had changed since Africa. I wondered if what we shared was just a memory now. Emma talked excitedly while everyone watched us. She took my arm and we walked to the editing room where she worked. She wanted to show me the video she had filmed during her travels. Emma was dressed in a pretty long black skirt and a white blouse with simple heels. It felt like a fashion showcase with how everyone was dressed. Her outfit was much smarter than what I was used to seeing her wear. I remembered our good times exploring together. I decided to go with the flow and see how the next few hours went. We talked about her work on a book and the videos that would go along with it. Some would be on YouTube and most would be available on the publisher's website. "Do you have time for dinner? I want to catch up and tell you what's been going on with me besides work." "How long can you stay?" she asked. "I can stay for a few days. My flight back is in 3 days, but I can change it if I need to. What do you have in mind?" I wasn't sure how Emma felt. Was she inviting me to stay longer, or trying to see when I would leave? I didn't want to be in the way. "I want you to meet my family. I've told them a lot about you, and they are excited to meet you." That was a surprise. "Oh, well, I guess I can do that. But first I need to eat, and I'd love to try some good German beer. I can meet you after your work." "No, you won't be doing that. We're leaving now, together. It's been months since I saw you, and I have something important to share." As we walked out, many people turned to look at us. Emma held my hand as we walked back to my hotel. I asked her where she lived, and she said her apartment was not far away. I briefly wondered if there was more about her life that I didn't know. The last thing I wanted was to be an unexpected complication. It's easy to hide things while traveling, but I needed to be aware of everything when she settled back at home. I realized there was still a lot I didn't know about Emma, and maybe meeting her family was the right idea. When we got to the hotel, the warmth between us was clear. We enjoyed being together, feeling more connected like old friends. It was nice to feel close again after feeling distant for a while. Eventually, we decided to freshen up and grab something to eat. Luckily, the hotel had a good restaurant, and it was easy to find good beer in Germany. Emma chose a Diet Cola, which was surprising since she usually liked beer. "Why does your family want to meet me?" I asked. "I've told them about our travels in Africa. They are excited to meet you, especially since you're from the United States. I've also shared stories from my trips in Canada. My parents have visited the U.S. a few times, mainly to see my aunt in Florida." "That must be nice for them, especially with the warm weather there." Emma smiled. "Yes, my aunt loves the beach." She took a sip of her drink. "We can visit my parents tomorrow if you're up for it. We'll need to take the train." "Is that a long trip?" "It takes about 6 hours." "Where do they live?" "In Ulm, in the south. My father worked as an engineer for Volkswagen and would talk for hours about his job. I find it boring, but he loves it. My mother was an accountant, but she is retired now, along with my father. I'll call them and let them know we're coming." I decided to go with the flow for now. The conversation shifted to me. "So are you completely free now?" she asked. I smiled wide. "Yes, I am, and I have the papers to prove it." I took out the folded document from my pocket and placed it on the table. "I'm a free man." Emma unfolded it and looked closely. "Congratulations. How does that feel?" "It feels good. I knew it had to end once I found out she had been with someone else for almost 2 years. She didn't want to be with me if she could do that for so long." I shrugged and took a sip of my beer. "What do you want to do next?" she asked. Her questions felt serious. I realized she was bringing me to meet her family, which seemed important. We had developed a closeness that usually takes time. I wondered if it was a cultural thing, how quickly we had connected, but it felt different. "I'm not sure. I don't know how much longer I want to be in Albany. They want me at the hospital and will pay well, but there is too much baggage there. I need to find another place to explore. You gave me the wanderlust, you know. It's mostly your fault." I grinned, and Emma smiled back. We spent the night at the hotel and went to Emma's apartment the next morning so she could pack. She made some calls, and then we took a taxi to the station. I love trains in Europe. They are on time, easy to access, and have less security than airports. We found our seats and settled in for the ride. When we arrived in Ulm, a couple in their early 60s greeted us. Right away, I noticed Emma resembled her mother, sharing her eyes and hair but having her father's smile. We introduced ourselves and headed to her father's car, a Passat wagon. In Europe, they call them estate cars. Their house was older but well kept. Inside, it was recently updated with modern appliances. I complimented her father, Carl, saying my dad was a builder and would admire his work. Carl seemed pleased with the praise. I was offered a beer, and while Emma went to get the drinks, I could sense her parents were eager to learn about me. They started with, "So, you're American. Where in America?" I wanted to make a good impression. All the manners my parents taught me came into play. "I'm from Albany, New York. It's about a 2.5-hour drive north of New York City." They nodded, understanding the reference. Thankfully, Emma returned with drinks. Beer for Carl and me, red wine for her mother, and ice water for herself. I began to see how to connect with them. As the room fell silent, and their eyes focused on me, I knew I had to start talking to ease the tension. The best way to get a conversation going is to ask people about themselves, so I used what little I knew from Emma to encourage them to share. Carl easily launched into stories about Volkswagen and the quality of their cars. Emma's mother, Maria, was more reserved. She had been an accountant, mostly doing audits, and retired when Carl did. They talked about wanting to travel to warmer places, especially to buy a vacation home in Spain or Greece, somewhere sunny during the winter. It reminded me a bit of my own family. My parents had bought a big RV with a powerful diesel engine. They planned to travel around the country and spoil their grandchildren. I know they expected that I would have more kids to join my brother's family, but that didn't happen. In the kitchen, a big dinner was being prepared. Carl kept talking about how great German engineering and beer were, while Emma watched me closely. Carl wanted me to know that he was the one who got Emma into motorcycling. He had owned bikes for most of his adult life and still had a BMW 1200 in his garage. He also had a smaller bike for nearby rides, but the big one was for longer trips. Maria often rode with him, and they would go away for several days, enjoying the open road. He was excited to show me his motorcycles tomorrow. But for now, we focused on dinner. I felt like I was being checked over, almost like a job interview. They asked about my life goals and where I saw myself in 10 years. I thought I would be in a different bedroom than Emma, but I was surprised to find fresh towels for both of us in the same room. When we went to bed, I figured it would be quiet, so I kept my clothes on. "Why are you doing that?" Emma asked, looking at my boxers. "Because we're at your parents' house, and it didn't feel right to be fully undressed here." She laughed lightly. "They're very comfortable with each other. It's just us. I want to be close to you." I settled into a comfortable position and soon felt the warmth of Emma beside me. It felt natural to be close again. After a little while, we held each other and relaxed for a moment. I whispered, "How long?" Emma hesitated. "How long?" "Yes, how long?" "How long for what?" "How many weeks? I'm a doctor. I can tell when someone is expecting. Your body has some signs. I think maybe 3 or 3.5 months. I realized what this meant. I was going to be a father. Emma smiled and got up to get her bag. She handed me a plastic test. 2 blue stripes. Just like that, my world changed. I calculated the dates in my head. About 3 months. I saw a doctor in Berlin about a month ago. I have an appointment for an ultrasound next week. I thought Emma and I might go our separate ways, not as partners but as friends. Relationships often cool with time and distance. Still, I wanted to see if we could reconnect, and it felt like we were. Just a minute. I got off the bed and looked in my bag for something I had brought. I returned to bed with it. Emma sat up, and I opened a small box to reveal a ring. "Will you marry me?" Her face lit up and her eyes grew wide. "Yes, yes, yes." I hugged her tightly until I remembered that her family might be curious about our news. I quickly got dressed and opened the door, finding 2 surprised people down the hall. "We will be right out." Emma dressed fast, and we went into the living room to share our news. Maria had a feeling about Emma's pregnancy. Mothers often do. Carl was happy to hear that his daughter was marrying an American. 2 days later, David and I took a train back to Berlin. We had important things to do, especially the ultrasound appointment. David called the hospital where he worked and shared the news with his family. His parents were thrilled, especially knowing I was expecting. I planned to take a break from work, but assured my publishing company that I would work from home on the book and handle videos as much as possible. At the ultrasound appointment, the real news came. The doctor moved the wand around my belly to find the heartbeat. David watched the monitor, and I saw the joy on his face. I knew it was good news. The doctor let us hear the heartbeat. Then, I heard David say, "Oh, wow," which caught my attention. The heartbeat was fast. David looked at me and said, "We are going to have twins." The doctor smiled, and I was filled with joy. We got married in Berlin. Maria, Carl, a few of Emma's friends, and some people from her work came about 30 in total. News spread quickly among Emma's co-workers that the American she talked about was there. They all wanted to meet the doctor who rides motorcycles. We had many choices to make. We decided to go to Albany for a while, to find a home close to my family, with room for visits from Maria and Carl. I talked to the hospital and reached an agreement for shorter shifts in exchange for a slightly lower salary. That was fine with me. I had a pregnant wife, and I wanted to spend as much time as I could with her. The following months were busy. Emma's pregnancy was going well. We found a lovely 4-bedroom house nearby, perfect for raising kids. Marcy and Emma dove into decorating the house and planning activities for our growing family. My wife, Emma Maria Fisher Walters, gave birth to beautiful twin girls, each weighing nearly 6 pounds. Our days became a routine of feeding and changing diapers. I forgot what sleep was like. Maria and my mother were in a friendly competition for best grandmother. My father and Carl are in a friendly competition to see who can create better designs and buildings. They both have big ideas for renovating and expanding my house. I can't keep up with them, and I don't plan to try. David. Just when you think life has brought you down, something good can come from it. I lost my wife because of her choices, which led to the end of our marriage. I loved her, but she decided on a different path. I felt sad about it, but her decisions had clear results. Meeting Emma was a complete surprise. If I hadn't gotten a flat tire in Newfoundland while getting ice cream, I probably would never have met her. Who knows where I'd be now? But I do know that meeting her was the best event of my life. I have a fresh start, a wonderful wife, 2 children, and a future that excites me. This is the life I wanted. Just hearing her pleasant accent makes me happy. We are going to have a big family. Thanks for listening. Emma. I get to have the last word. Not long after I moved to America, I was out shopping for baby furniture with my sister-in-law, Marcy, at IKEA. A woman there seemed to be watching Marcy closely, clearly recognizing her. Marcy turned to the woman and said, "Hello, Diane." I knew who Diane was, even though I had never seen a photo of her. She was David's ex-wife, who had been with someone else for a long time before David found out. "Hi, Marcy, how are you?" Diane asked. As I turned around, my very pregnant belly was easy to see. I wanted to check her out, and as I expected, she was quite attractive. Marcy looked at Diane and said, "Diane, this is Emma, David's wife. We're shopping for baby furniture." It was clear she wanted Diane to understand what she had lost. "She's having twins." With that, Marcy gently pulled my arm and we walked away. I overheard her softly say, "Not a good choice." Afterward, we picked up our purchases from the warehouse and got help loading them into Marcy and Paul's truck. We went out for lunch, and I got the full story from Marcy about Diane and her past actions. I already knew much of it, but hearing it from someone else was helpful. David's family never spoke of her. They preferred to forget her. That night when David got home, we shared a special moment, and I loved being close to him. I dreamed about us traveling together. David's parents own a large motorhome and have offered to lend it to us for a trip with the babies. Our motorcycles might have to wait for a little while. I'll have to think about that. It could be a fun adventure.